Hey everybody, this is Kevin and welcome to an all-new rocket build video. And today I'm excited to announce the re-release of the long-awaited 1/48 scale Gemini Titan. I cannot tell you how excited I am. I'm sure all of you out there have been waiting for years for the re-release of this rocket, and it's finally made its way back into production and out to the market. And I am so excited to have one to build for you and show you the ins and outs of the kit and how it goes together. And hopefully we'll have a beautiful looking rocket at the end. So let's go ahead and admire this beautiful box and the artwork. They claim it'll go up to 350 feet on a C5-3. I'm sorry, two C5-3s. So it's a clustered rocket design. It does come down under one single parachute. 27-inch length, a diameter of 2.5 inch, and it's got the all-new ripstop parachute that Estes is selling. Here's a little bit of the history of the original Gemini program. All right, well, let's stop admiring the outside of the box and let's start admiring what's inside of the box. So let me get my knife here and we'll get this thing opened up. Okay, once we get the box emptied, we'll do a quick inventory on everything. So let me just kind of let things fall as they may. Okay. Oh, there's more down there. And I think that's, I think we got a decal sheet maybe? Yeah, we got some decals, and that looks like that's the end of the box. All right, so let me go ahead and get all this situated, and we'll come back and do a quick inventory on everything. Okay, time to do the inventory. Starting up in the top left corner, we've got the two capsule sides, A and B. And one thing I will point out, which is a really nice touch, is the fact that the seam lines where the two halves join is at a natural seam in the capsule itself. So it's not going to be anything you have to sand down flush with the body. It's actually part of the natural seam. So I like how they did that. That's going to make finishing a whole lot easier. So thank you, Estes, for that. Next up, we've got the capsule base, which basically acts as our nose cone, or the base of the nose cone. Then we've got our hot stage base, which is this domed feature right here. Then we've got two couplers. It's these two brown tubes right here. These are going to be our tube couplers. Then we've got our main body tube, which is this guy right here. Then we've got four panels, which are these guys right here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are going to make up a truss system around the center. Then we've got our upper ring, which is this piece right here. Then we've got some raceways, or what they call them, tunnels. You got, we need 2 bottom tunnels and 2 lower tunnels. So I see 2 and 2, correct. Okay, then we've got 2 body tubes of BT20. So these are going to be our motor tubes right here. 2 of them, because there are 2 motors in this clustered system. Then we've got our larger body tube, which will be coupled to the smaller one. Then we've got our nozzle base right here. Then we've got our 2 display nozzles. This is not for flight, but for display only, but it's 2 halves, A and B. Okay. Then we've got our nozzle truss. which should be located right here in this cardboard box. So very similarly to the Soyuz kit that they produced, they do have a 3D printed piece here. This is going to be our nozzle truss unit right here. So it's a little more delicate and fragile, so I will place it back in the box for safekeeping. Then we've got 2 base tabs, which are these wooden pieces right here. Then we've got a wooden locking ring, which will be the larger gapped ring. Then we've got our locking ring base, which is this one here with the smaller rectangles. Then we've got our coupler bulkhead, which is our solid piece. And then we've got our smaller bulkhead backer. Okay, then we've got our yellow spacer tube. Then we've got our balsa truss structures, which is this balsa piece right here. Then we've got our top of the tunnel. Which is in here in the little bag. Again, it's these 2 longer plastic pieces. Then we've got our upper tunnel. There should be 2 of those as well, and there are 2 smaller pieces right there. Then we've got our engine block, which should be right here, and there should be 2 of those. You see, there should be a second one laying around here somewhere. There it is. Okay, we've got our 2 engine blocks. And we should have our screw eye, which is rather large. Nice. Okay. Then we've got our 2 engine retainer sets, again, because we are running 2 motor clusters. You got the screw-on caps and then the rings. Then there are 4 locking tabs. We've got those wooden pieces right here. Our launch lug. Okay, I was not able to locate the launch lug. Being an early version of the kit, they may have overlooked it. But fortunately, that's an easy part to replace, so I will come up with a launch lug to use for the building of this kit. Then we have our clay. This is for our nose weight to balance the rocket. Then we've got our 2 fins, which come together in this plastic bag. Then we've got our balsa centering ring, which is still in its template. We'll pop that out when the time comes. And then last but not least, we've got, actually not last, we've got several more things. We do have a display stand right here. This is obviously not for flight, but display only. And then our display rod, which will enable us to stand the rocket up for display. And then we've got our parachute. It's a 24-inch ripstop. We've got our shock cord. And we've got our 2 decal sheets. Right there. Okay, so that takes care of the inventory. Everything but the launch lug has been accounted for. If I do come across it, I'll make mention of it later in the video, but for now, I'm not seeing it anywhere. But let me clear the board and we will get right into the process of building the Gemini Titan. Okay, full disclosure. I found the launch lug and it's very interesting. When you're opening your kit and you're taking things out of your plastic bags, do not rush to throw your bags away, because here's one of the plastic bags that I opened and removed everything. And taped to the bag was the launch lug. So I'm not sure if all kits are going to come that way or if it was just this one in particular, but I don't want to rip any of the paper off, but there we go. Now I've got the launch lug, so we can check that off the box. Okay, the first step is assembling the engine mount. However, before we start that, I want to show you what I typically like to do at the start of all of my builds, is I take my main body tubes out and I spray them down with the cheapest primer I can find at the store, typically Rust-Oleum. And what I do is I spray it down and immediately with lacquer thinner, I wipe it off. And I do that, in this case, 3 coats, and it's almost flush, but what that does is it fills in the spiral grooves and it removes everything else around it. And over the course of several coats, you'll build up that spiral layer until everything's flush. This is 3 coats. I still feel just a hint of a notch, but that's going to get filled in when we do our fillable sandable primer coat later in the build before painting. But anyway, I just wanted to show you, I do those initially right off the bat. That way they've got time to dry and cure while we do this of the build. So with that being said, now we can begin working on our engine mount. And the first step is to take our locking ring, base, and our locking tabs and glue them in to those 4 slots around the perimeter. You want to lay down some wax paper, which I've done on my workbench, and we'll set that there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in each of those rectangles with wood glue, and then we'll slit those tabs into place and let them dry. So, and I've also got a Q-tip here to help apply the glue. Just going to run a seam. We'll use the glue to help, or the Q-tip to help spread the glue. Take a paper towel and just wipe off any immediate excess, because it's going to be hard to get to it after we glue the tabs in. Okay. Now the rest of it will be pushed down into the wax paper, but that will clean up and sand later. So set those down. Now you want to be careful with the orientation. You want the curved portion sticking up and out, and you want the opening facing left. So we're going to be kind of doing this in a counterclockwise direction. Okay, we're going to fit the first one in, the second one behind it, so number 3 and number 4. Now you'll notice these are a little bit loose, and that's okay. We're going to let them harden just a little bit, and then we're going to come back and adjust anything with the locking ring. So let's, real quick, now that we have a chance, let's wipe down the wax paper. That gets the initial glue out of the way. Okay. Set that back down. Get those down and flush. You can already feel them kind of tightening up on us there. Okay, now we're going to take our ring and we're just going to lay it on it and make sure it locks in correctly. Align everything. Okay, that's good. We'll gently twist this and remove it. Okay, we're going to let that set up for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we can come back and remove it, and then we can continue working on the extra parts. Okay, now that the locking ring base is dry, we are going to somewhat skip a step. They want you to glue these tabs in across these little beams that span across the mount. However, I'm going to wait until I cut the other end of the mount off. That way I can help use it to position and make sure that everything's in alignment with one another. So I'm going to set that aside for now. So we're going to prepare this to go. We're just going to sand this smooth, because once we get it in, it's going to be harder to sand it. So let's just sand that facing. We'll go ahead and do the other side as well. Okay, now next thing we need to do is draw a line right across the circumference of the circle. And what they recommend, and I agree, you've got these little tabs that we need to cut out. There are notches right in the middle of those tabs. We can use those as alignment marks. So we can just draw our line right across those 2 points. Okay, there's our center line. That actually doesn't quite look as good as I was hoping it would look. Let's try that again. Let's center a little bit better. Yeah, we're gonna go with the right line. This must have slipped on me a little bit or something, but we're gonna go with the line on the right. Okay. Actually, let's sand that down just a little bit more. Okay. Okay, now we're gonna take a sharp X-Acto and we're gonna cut this out. We're gonna cut through those tabs that they've already created for us. Quite. There we go. Okay. Punch out these center holes. There we go. Now let's just do a dry fit here. Since we've got it, let's go ahead and sand the backs of these now where they were stuck to the wax paper. There we go. Okay, so let's just do a dry fit. We'll get these beams in. Okay, that's a good dry fit. Okay. I did miss one step. They actually do want you to draw an intersecting line perpendicular. So let's just let's measure this across to get our center point. 2 3/8, so let's go 1 3/16. That's our center mark. So I'm going to line this up on my bench with lines, okay. Does anyone actually use the grid lines behind you on these mats? Actually help. I'm lining this vertical line in line with those on the mat, and then same thing here. I'm going to line this up with the mat. And that gives us a perpendicular line, just like that. Perfect. Okay, now take our wood glue again. And same as before, we'll go ahead and put on our glue. Okay. Insert one, insert the other. Okay, just wipe that excess off. And then we'll take the balsa piece, and we want the lines facing outward. On this one, I'm actually going to glue on the tabs. That way there'll probably be less to clean up. Okay, just eyeball, make sure everything looks perpendicular and straight, which it does. So that assembly is now complete. We're just going to let that sit and dry. Okay, one additional step. I'm going to treat this kind of like you would a fin. I actually lay down a fillet on each side, and I think that'll help strengthen up this bar. I went ahead and ran a bead of glue down each side already, and we'll just smooth that fillet out with our Q-tip, and then same on this side. We're not adding any weight per se, but we are increasing our strength, so it's a win-win. Okay, now we're just going to let that all sit and dry. Okay, the next step will be gluing in the engine blocks into the aft end of each fin tube. And they give you an engine spacer, and they tell you to mark 1/4 inch down, so when you slide this in and push the engine block up, you'll stop at that point. Well, I came up with this idea several years ago, where if you drill a couple holes and run a toothpick in, that is an automatic stopper for when you push that in. It stops you right at that point. Now, because the thickness of the toothpick will extend beyond that 1/4 inch, you'll have to offset your drilling a little bit toward the end of the tube, so the furthest end of the toothpick will be at the 1/4 inch. So if we were to measure that right there, we're exactly 1/4 inch on the ruler. Hope that made sense. But this is my little spacing tool that I developed. Okay, so we're going to take our wood glue, and you'll notice the length of a Q-tip is, if you were to pinch one end, you're pretty much right at the point where you want to route the glue in the tube. So we're going to go ahead and run our glue on the Q-tip. We'll place it down, and then we'll just smear it around, pull it out, and then take our engine block, take our spacer, push it in, and pull it right out. Okay, so now we're just going to let that dry. We'll do the other one while we're at it. Okay, so we're gonna let those dry and we'll come back and work on the fin attachment. Okay, next up we're going to mark our fin tubes with the alignment guides, so we'll have our placement as to where to glue our fins on. So we take this template. Now in my case, I like to photocopy my instructions. I don't like to cut up the original manual, but you can do either way. Just make sure if you do photocopy it, it's actual size. Don't enlarge or reduce the template. But simply wrap this around, line up the little notch marks, and then take a piece of tape, securing those together, and then we'll make our 3 lines. Okay, and we can remove that. I like to use my fin alignment or fin marking guide that Estes sells. It's a wonderful tool, but we'll use it to extend our lines the full length of the body tube. Okay. I'll do the same to the other tube off camera, and we'll come back and we'll epoxy the engine retainer and the fins onto the tube. Okay, in preparation for building the bulkhead, we first need to glue on this backing ring. I'm just going to use some wood glue, and I placed a toothpick through it. That'll give me a little positioning while we get it centered. That'll help out with that. And it's not going to take much. I'm just going to put just a little bit on here because it's going to spread out. Okay, yeah, it's going to kind of squeegee out once we get it in place. But let's go ahead and place it down. Get the toothpick in the hole and just then press it in. Just like that. And we can pull the toothpick out. Okay, we'll just set that aside and dry, and now we can start working on the upper portion of the truss. Okay, while the bulkhead is drying, we can go ahead and assemble the dome and the truss system. I'm going to use a combination of plastic cements. I'm going to use the thicker Testors cement, and I'm also going to use the Tamiya extra thin to run through the seams. So, first thing to note is there are 4 distinct sides to this dome. If you look closely here, hopefully the light can pick it up. There's a number 1 right there. Let's see, there's a number 2 right there. 3 and 4. I'm going to line 1 facing me, that way I can keep track of things. And these 4 panels also are numbered. If you look on the back, there's a number 1 up there. And then we have 2, this should be 2. 2 is labeled right there, 3, and then 4. And they are different. They do have different numbers of holes. So you need to be sure to install them in the proper numerical order. I'm going to use the thicker cement to put down in the post holes where the posts will go in. And then I will just run the thin cement around the perimeter of that to help hold them in position and to each other once I get all 4 in. So we're going to start with number 1. I'm just going to put a dab over each post hole. And a little on that plastic notch. Okay. we'll take number 1. We'll set it down into position, just like that. Okay, now let's get 2 in, and then we can join the 2 at their seam. Oh. Well, until I get that the second one on, they're just gonna have to try to hold their best. Okay, once I get the other one in, then we can position them, hold them together with the thin cement. Okay, so now we'll get this one in position. Drop it into place. There. Okay, now I'm going to take my thin cement and I'm going to use a paintbrush. I'll hold them in alignment to each other and then just run cement down the seam. Okay, and then also now we can run some cement around the base. There. Yeah, getting that first one set was the trick. Or I should say the first 2, but now that they're both in, they will support each other and support the rest of the structure. Okay, we can also, since we can, let's run a seam up the center of that one as well. Okay, so we got 1 and 2, 1 and 2, so 3's on the back side here. So I'm going to rotate it around. Drop it into position. Okay, now we can run it around the base. And the inside seam. Okay, and finally, number 4. And this will just kind of lock everything into position. And we've got 2 seams to do on the inside. Okay, now we get to lock them all together with this inner locking ring. There are notches on the inside of the ring, 4 of them, that will be placed over the notches on the inside of the rings there. Okay, just do a little dry fit here to make sure everything's in alignment. Oh yeah, that's a perfect fit. Okay, I'm going to place the glue on, actually change the plans. I'm going to place the glue in the groove. That way any glue that gets squeegeed up is going to come up and out the top, which is going to be a lot easier to clean than if it were inside the unit. Okay, anchor paper towel. Clean off all the excess. Perfect. Okay, we're just going to let that sit and cure for a little bit, and then we can go on to the next step of attaching this to a coupler tube. Okay, while the hot stage is drying, we can go ahead and now work on the bulkhead that has been drying. I would recommend that you drill out the hole a little bit more than what they give you, because this is a pretty beefy screw eye, and if you don't, you're probably going to split the wood. I did do a test run. I did 3/16 of an inch, and I'm sorry, 3/32, and nice and clean. It did split a little bit on the backside, but that'll get all pulled in, and we're going to glue everything together. They recommend doing this after you glue it in the bulkhead. I'm sorry, into the coupler. I would rather be able to do it first, and then I can do the put like a fillet on the top of the screw once it's inside the tube, before we glue the hot stage in over top of that. So that being said, let's take some wood glue, inject it into the hole a little bit, and go ahead and thread that in. I'm going to take it just until the threads start to disappear. Right there. Okay. So now we can go ahead and add our fillet a lot easier to the back side. And we'll go ahead and cover the whole thing in some glue. Clean that fillet up a little bit. And now we can put a little bit of a fillet. I'm actually going to use a Q-tip so I don't get glue on the hook with my fat finger. There we go, just like that. Okay, now I'm going to let that sit just for a bit so it's not as wet, tack up, and then we'll go ahead and glue it into the coupler. Okay, again, things we can be working on while we're letting glue dry. Still waiting for the glue to harden up on the screw eye. So I'm back to our hot stage, and this is an excellent opportunity to go ahead and sand down those joints where the 4 panels met. It's easier now before you're gluing a bunch of other stuff to it. I'm starting out with some 800 grit just to go over the seam line. And once you get that dark line to disappear, which means everything is flush and even with each other. See, right here, we're flush and even here, but we've still got a little bit of a ridge there. So like if you run your fingernail over it, you'll feel that ridge right there, but not right there. So just keep sanding until that dark line disappears. I don't want to be too aggressive with, say, 400 or 500 grit. I think 800 is a nice, safe number to work with without digging too much into the plastic. Okay, we got it to where we want it. Now we can go to 2000, and this is just going to polish it up so it's got that same smooth, consistent feel to it that the rest of the plastic has before you even touch it with sandpaper. See, there, now that just feels natural. Okay, so we can just move on to the next one. I won't bore you with all of them, just to get a brief idea of what I'm doing. Is this necessary? Absolutely not. But this is an expert build, and it gives the opportunity to put expert craftsmanship into the build, so take advantage of it. Okay, the next thing we need to do is to take our coupler prior to gluing in either the bulkhead or the hot stage, is to measure and cut it at the 2.5 inch mark. So let's go ahead and get our measurement in first. So we're looking for 2.5 inches. Puts us right here. Okay, and then what I like to do is take a piece of cardstock with one side cut in a way that you know that's not the straight side. This is definitely the straight side. So we're going to wrap it around the tube. We're going to line up the other end with one another, just like that. That's perfect right there. Okay, and then we're just going to tape it shut. Okay, we're going to line it up to the mark we made. So let's our mark. There's our mark. Line it up right on it. Okay, now we're just going to take our pencil and we're going to continue that line all the way around like that. Okay, just like that. Okay, the next step is actually cutting the coupler, and there's probably 1,001 different ways of doing it. You do whatever you find the best and easiest. One thing that you can do is, I've done this in the past, take a hose clamp. Unfortunately, this one's a little too small to fit, but you could open this up and clamp it onto your coupler and then tighten it down right on the line and use this as your cutting guide. That works really good. Another way to do it is just to build up wrap of masking tape and then use that as a cutting guide. But in the case of this, because it's a coupler, it'll easily slip into one of the body tubes, and I can use the body tube itself as my cutting guide. You just got to be careful when you do it this way, because if you push too hard, you risk actually cutting into the body tube, and we definitely don't want to damage it. So I'm just doing light cuts, letting the blade naturally follow the lead of the body tube while the tip of the blade does the cutting into the coupler. Okay, we're getting down to the point where it's deep enough where it's actually starting to turn the tube. So now I think we can pull this out, and we've got a pretty good groove to work with. So we can just continue letting it follow its own groove there. Okay, and I've done this trick in times past. Take a straight edge razor blade and work it into the groove. and just press it down that groove line, and it will just naturally follow its intended course. We did lose the tracking a little bit because there's a natural spiral built into the way this paper's wound, so that doesn't make it the easiest surface. But we can clean that up and straighten it, and then we'll have exactly the length we want. Let's make sure we're at 2.5 inches. Boom, right on the money. Okay, so we're just about ready, and this part here can be discarded. So we're about ready to glue on the bulkhead, and yeah, we'll do that first. Okay, one other thing you may want to think about when building your Gemini Titan is when it comes to painting, of course, the easiest thing to do is get as much painted before gluing than after. That means less masking. For example, this piece here is eventually going to glue into body tube, right? Like that. Now this and this are going to be different colors, so there's no need for me to glue it into there just yet, because I can paint this separately and this separately and then glue them. Same thing with the bottom side. This is going to be going into body tube. Now this body tube is the same color as this, so they're both going to be silver. But why glue this on here? Because I'm just going to have to mask the tube off. So let's just go ahead and paint this unit silver, and then we'll glue it onto the tube. So you want to be thinking ahead as you progress as to what can I get done with painting before I start gluing stuff together. So that's one of the things. So this, for all intents and purposes, is done for quite a while. We're not going to see this again until it's after it's already been painted. So if you don't see it before then, I will primer this and then spray it in silver, the same silver that's going to go in the body tube. So next time you see this, it will be colored. So that being said, we can go ahead and glue our bulkhead in now. I'm going to glue the bulkhead in the end that we cut, only because it's not quite as perfect. It's darn near, I mean, you can't see any waves in that line. But if you look close, you'll see a little jigger here, a little jagger there. So we're going to use this as the end that this will glue into, because then I can glue a fillet around the inner liner, and it'll mask some of that cutting that we did. Okay, this is a pretty loose fit. It's not going to fall out. It's just I didn't have to do any sanding is what I'm getting at. Usually we do. Okay, so we're just going to run a bead of wood glue. All around the base there. And I'm going to get the towel ready, because I'm going to smear this now with my finger. That way we ensure we get all the way up to the edge and get full coverage. Okay, we're going to slip this in. Now the instructions do call for gluing this in flush. I'm gonna leave it just shy of flush, that way we have room to do a fillet, like I said earlier. So there. Let me press that a little bit lower. The lower you go, the better fillet you can get. So yeah, that's a good placement right there. So let me go wipe this down. We're gonna let this harden in place, and then we'll come in and we'll put a more proper fillet around the perimeter. Okay, the next thing we need to do is mark our body tubes for the raceways, for the launch lugs, for the motor mount alignment, all the markings we need to put on at this point. Again, I photocopied my alignment guide and cut it out. So I'm going to wrap this around the tube. Now make sure you establish, and in fact I've written it right here, I wrote aft at the bottom of this tube. Keep that in mind because we're going to match this to that, in that we have a bottom here. We need to put the bottom up against the end of the tube. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, get our marks in line with one another. Okay, grab a piece of tape. And I'm also going to use a piece of tape to secure this to the tube so it doesn't rotate on us if it slips. Okay, now I'm going to transfer all of these lines onto our tube. And for this dash line, I'm going to put a couple dash lines. Okay, that should be all. Okay, good deal. Now we can remove that. And another thing we can do is take this and put it on our other tube, which we're not going to glue onto our hot stage just yet. So determine your aft side, which is right there. Let's see if I can get this on gently. I'm not going to risk it. Let's just go ahead and open it up and do it the right way. Okay, same thing, we'll start with our launch lug. Motor mount. And one more set. Okay. Now we can take our mounting tube guide here. Okay. Find all of our lines that we made. Transfer those over. Okay, and for our dash line, I'm just going to make some light dashes down the tube. There we go. like one more to go. Okay, I'm gonna do the exact same process on this tube. I just won't bore you with it, so we'll get that done and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, we're gonna take a timeout from the other assemblies while glue is drying, and we're gonna go ahead and attack the display engine nozzle assembly. First thing we need to do is we're gonna take the 2 halves of the twin nozzle set, and you'll notice one side's got the post, the other one side has the holes. We're just gonna plug those in, and fortunately they're a pretty snug fit, which is gonna help us hold things in position while we apply the cement. So what I'm gonna do is just run my liquid cement along the seam. I'll hold that for a second. Okay, we can also run it down the outside seam, and then once we do this, I'm going to go ahead and clamp it with the clothespin. And we'll do the same to this side. Okay, now we can come and address the inner portion. Okay, for this one, we can actually work from the inside of the nozzle. And now let's work on the inner seam. Okay, perfect. Okay, off camera, I did some sanding. I took some 1800 grit and I cleaned up the seam lines where the 2 halves met. Got those smoothed out. Touched up the nozzles as well, so you don't feel any ridges as you run your finger over them. So that's all set to go. I also got the 3D printed trestle parts and the base. Boy, it's a tight fit, which is good. It's gonna hold well for us. But just doing a little dry fitting here. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue it all up, primer it, and then we'll do the individual painting. I thought about painting it first, but it's really, the masking's not going to be that difficult, and I think it'd be better if we just get it all glued up together in one piece. I think that'll help facilitate things a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to grab my brush. I'm just going to dab a little cement in each of these holes, and then lay these posts. Like I said, I did a dry fit, everything fit nice. So let's go ahead and get that piece in first. Nice, everything's flush. I'm just gonna go around the base just slightly. There we go. Oops, sorry. Okay, now we have 3 points, 1, 2, and 3, that are gonna go into these holes here. 1, 2, and 3. And also, the inside of these 4 legs are going to glue onto this piece here. However, I'm not going to glue that on until the only thing I'm going to pre-glue is those 3 posts. So let me go ahead and put some cement on the top of each post, just to soften them up. Okay, slip this in. And, oh, perfect. Everything fell right into place. Okay, we'll hold that for a second while the cement takes grip. Okay, we'll go over that seam. Okay, so that is now complete. So as it is right now, I'm going to go out and I'm going to mask off this portion here, because this will be what glues into our cardboard tube. But then everything else is going to get primered and then painted. Next time you see it, all the painting will be done. But what I'm going to do is first paint this center portion here white, let that cure, then I'm going to mask it off and then paint everything down here in silver, and then the nozzles black, as per the instructions. So now you know the steps I'll be performing, but like I said, I'll do this off camera, and next time you see this, it'll be all painted and ready to go. Okay, next we're gonna work on the raceways. It's a little tricky, but it's not really that difficult. Just have a little patience and work meticulously, and you'll have no problem in sanding them. I've already got 3 done, and I'll show you what they look like. The key is sanding the smaller piece to shape, and then just gluing it down on the end and mating them together. Like I said, I've done 3 of them. I'm going to show you how I do them. I'll do the 4th one. First thing I want to do is I want to draw a line right at the widest point on each side, and then just draw that line straight across. That's going to be our slant line, one going one way and then the other slant going the other way. Then what I like to do is just take a piece of a little flat sanding block, and I'm going to hold this at an angle and pushing down with my index finger, pushing the sanded part down into the paper. Make sure you press evenly, and it doesn't take long. See right there, we're already cutting into our pencil mark, and we're down to a point at the front. Let me sharpen that point up just a little bit more. And we want to make sure our sanding line is in line with that pencil line we drew. We don't want any weird angles. Okay, and then we're going to come around this side, and I'm going to pinch just the back end where we were sanding, and I'm going to drive that into the sandpaper. And when my fingers hit the edge of the sanding block, that's where we stop at the line. That's our guide right there. So now I'm just going to do the same thing, but at a less angle, because we have less of an angle here. And we're just going to sand it down to a point. And typically what will happen is you'll get a curvature, and I'll show you that. Yep, see, it's pointed at one end. and then it kind of gets fat and then goes level. So now we want to stay away from the tip, but we want to sand that fat part. So we draw a straight line between our line and the pointy tip. So I'm going to hold the tip up a little bit, and we're going to sand down that middle portion, the fat part. Periodically checking. Okay, just a little bit more, but we just about got it. Did not take long. There we go. So, I'm not sure if you can see that. I'm trying to use the white of the mat as background. But there's our angle slope to the tip. Okay, so once we get that, I'm just going to use some thick CA glue is all. I'm going to put a couple dabs on the block. Now you will probably get a little bit of glue on your finger, so this is where it can get a little bit messy. But if you've built models for any length of time, you're not a stranger to getting glue on your fingers. Okay, I'm going to take a toothpick and I'm just going to kind of spread that. Okay. And I'm going to lay it flush with the end of our long piece. Perfect. Just like that. Now I will go, in fact, I can do that now. Just going to take our sandpaper and I'm just going to kind of rub with my finger over that slope to kind of blend those two pieces in as one piece. There we go. One, I'll do another one, and then I'll do the rest off camera. There we go. So there's the cross-section profile view of what we've got. Okay, so that is how we do those. Again, I'll do these two off camera, and then they'll be just about ready to glue onto the body tube. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and glue the 4 raceways onto the lower body tube. And if you go back to your guide that we used to make our marks, if you line up back where we were, you'll see where there are lines, there's 4 of them labeled TS. Okay, those are the 4 lines that we're going to reference when gluing on these 4 raceways. At the base of each of these, I did mark a minuscule letters TS. You can barely read them, but I did put a TS at each of those 4 lines so I know where they are. And they want you to glue this raceway down with the right side of the wood piece flush with that line. So here's the line, here's the right side. I'm going to butt that up against the line, flush with the bottom of the tube, and that's where it's going to go. Just like that. We're going to do that 4 times. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some wood glue. I've got a paper towel next to me because you never work without paper towels. Just the lightest of beads. This is not going to take hardly any at all. And then just with your finger, rub that. Okay. Now, so we don't press it down now and get a bunch of ooze out of the sides. Just going to let it sit for a second and tack up. Blow a little air on it to dry it quicker. Okay. Now that'll better hold its position so it doesn't wander on you after you lay it down. Okay, so we're going to lay it down. Again, flush with the bottom and flush with that line. All the way up. See, and it holds its position because we let it tack up. If you look from behind, you can eyeball it and make sure it is running down the tube. Now, the depth perception is a little deceiving because the Let me show you another one, for example. The raceways are fatter right at that line that we drew. So when you look down the length of the tube, it's going to look offset a little bit because we're looking at a fat portion. Let's see if I can, there. But if you ignore this fat part right here, the rest of it is straight down that line. So again, I'm going to do the rest of the 4 off camera, 2, 3, and 4, and then we'll come back and do the channels that run alongside of them. Okay, now we're going to glue the launch lugs onto the body tube. Off camera, I went ahead and marked the position for them. It's the launch lug line is the one directly to the right of our motor mount reference line. So that's how you can tell that one. It's about 1/4 of an inch to the right. The first lug is going to be from the base of the tube up 1 inch. And the second one is going to be from the 4-inch mark to the 5-inch mark. So we have to cut the 2-inch lug into 2 halves. So I just got a brand new single-edge razor blade. I'm going to line this up on my grid because it is sectioned in inches, and I'm going to line this right up in the middle, and I'm just going to roll, and eventually this is going to slice right there. It goes. Beautiful. Perfect clean cut. And now we can glue these onto our body tube. Now for this, I'm going to use not wood glue, regular wood glue. I'm going to use the Titebond Quick and Thick. It dries a little quicker and is a little stronger. And we're also going to use this for our fillets once we're done. So I'm just going to, actually, I'd already scuffed up the area with sandpaper here. Let me scuff up the launch lug a little bit. We'll just run a thin bead. It's more or less just to hold it in position because the fillets are going to be what's really going to hold it in place structurally. So we're going to line that right up on our line. Eyeballing it from above. I'm going to sight it down from the rear, kind of like you're sighting a rifle. Okay, we'll let that sit, and now we'll do the second one. Oh, let me scuff it up too. We'll set it in position. Okay, we'll eyeball the two of them, make sure they're in alignment with one another. Okay, that looks really good. Not sure if we can pick that up on camera. There it is. Just like sighting a rifle. Okay, we're gonna let those harden up, and then we'll come back and we'll do our fillets on those, and then we can proceed with gluing our channels down the side as well, next to the truss structures. Okay, the lugs are dry, and now it's time to put down our fillets. In preparation, I did apply some masking tape above and below the upper launch lug and above the lower one. What I'm going to do is just run the fillet of glue in there, and with my finger, I'm just going to drag it across onto the tape. Both sides. Once I remove the tape, we're done. Of course, down here, I'm just going to pull it down until it's off the tube completely, and then that solves that problem. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get our glue out. We'll lay in our fillet and just with our finger, just gently pull it across. Nice. Okay, wipe the excess off. And we can come in down here and do the one. Well, it looks like it might have a little bit of an air bubble in it. Tell you what, I'm just going to poke that with my pencil. There, try to get that air bubble out. And let me just reapply a new fillet. Perfect. Okay, come to this side. Okay, now let's remove our tape. Beautiful. All right, so now we're just going to leave those to dry, and we'll come back and work on gluing our channels in. Okay, now we're going to glue the capsule together. Now this is going to be one of the easiest, if not the easiest step in the whole build. It's just a matter of plugging in those posts into the holes that are pre-made for you. And again, I mentioned this earlier, when you plug it in, there's a natural seam line in the capsule, and that's where they elected to put the seam line to join the two halves. Perfect engineering, because that's going to conceal our glue joint beautifully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some liquid cement, and first thing is I'm going to just put a dab in each of the holes. Okay, and then we'll get it plugged in together, and then we'll go around the outer seam with the brush. It's even hard to see where the seam is. Now there are two little tabs, I'm not sure if you can see them at the very top, they stick out. In transport and shipping and everything, they can get bent a little bit. So I'm going to apply just a little bit of cement to them, and then just pinch them inside of a clothespin. Oops. Actually, they're already holding. I probably don't even need the clothespin. But there, that'll hold them straight and together while everything dries. We can also apply cement down the center of the inside. Okay, beautiful. All right, that's see how easy that was? Okay, so we're just gonna let that sit and cure and move on to the next step. Okay, we're gonna go back now and glue the fin tubes into the engine mount. One thing you may note is I have painted the base of the mount white, just to give it some color and, you know, kind of protect that bare balsa wood that was exposed. So I did transfer some cross lines to the back of the leading bulkhead, so we'll have reference marks, but I want to do all this before we glue the fins on. So first I'm going to slide the tubes into position. Now we're going to glue them in to where they're flush on the top side. And let me go ahead and get this one started as well. Make sure we're in the right direction. We want to center this line here with our center line on this post here. Now the reason I'm using epoxy over wood glue is wood glue, it grabs really quickly and we just don't have time to work with it, whereas epoxy gives us that time to twist and adjust to get it where we want it to be. Okay, so I'm now going to actually, to make things a little easier, instead of using a big popsicle stick, we'll just take a toothpick to use as our spreader. Let me see if I can pass this. Careful when you do this, you don't want to crush the tube while you're squeezing it, so just be very cautious of that. Okay, so we're gonna get things somewhat in alignment. Okay, now this is 5-minute epoxy, so we don't have a whole lot of working time, but we've got enough. So I'm gonna run the epoxy around the base here. Now we can get this first one in. Okay, we want it to flush on the top. And get that reference line lined up, just like that. Okay, now I'm going to take some rubbing alcohol and Q-tip and clean off this extra that's squeegeed out, somewhat making a nice fillet out of it. Now I'll tell you that this epoxy is already starting to harden, so instead of pushing my luck, I'm gonna mix up a new batch and I'm gonna do the other tube off camera with a fresh batch because I don't want to risk this one locking up on me. So we'll do that and we'll come back and we need to glue our outer tube onto as well. Okay, the tubes are dry, the epoxy is dried, and I did go back in and put in some wood glue fillets on the top side of the bottom ring, if that makes any sense, just to give it a little bit more strength. So like I said, we're all set there. It's time now to glue it into our coupler. I'm going to take my wood glue and I'm going to coat the tip of a Q-tip. And we're going to lay it in there and just run that ring inside the tube. It's going to take a few applications. Let's do one more. Okay. Now we're going to get the first centering ring past the entrance, and we're going to stop. And then here, once again, we're going to put down a bead of wood glue. And this will be for the back ring. In this case, I'm going to try not to make a mess. There we go. Okay, and now let me spread this at least out to the edge so we'll know we pick up the ring. Might have overdone it a little bit, but that's okay because that actually acts as lubrication and it won't seize up on us quite as quickly. So I'm not too worried about that. Okay, now we're going to push it in and we're going to get this ring flush with the bottom of the tube. There. Just like that. Perfect. Okay, we're going to let that dry and we got to come back in. We got to do some cutting. Okay, we're going to now cut our tube flush with that forward centering ring. And what I did do off camera was I took a popsicle stick, I slid the stick into the tube until it hit the ring, and I put a pencil mark right there, and then I used that as a reference measuring guide to make 3 marks around the circumference of the tube. So I've got my measurements. Now I'm going to take a piece of cardstock, wrap it around, and this is how I'm going to establish my straight line, just like I've done before. You've seen this technique used before. Okay, we'll just lock that down with some tape. Okay, let's slide it and find my marks that I have. Okay, there's 1. Make sure I can find there's 2, and there's 3. Okay, so we'll line up on that. Okay, and now we'll draw our line all the way around it. Okay. There we go. Now we'll go ahead and take our X-Acto knife, and hopefully we'll see the knife protrude just in front of our forward centering ring. That'll tell us we got our measurements correct. Okay, I actually saw it going into the ring, so we're off by maybe 1/2 millimeter, so let me come up just a little bit. There we go. Now we're on it. See that? Okay, now I'm going to take my straight edge, and I'm actually going to monitor the inside and make sure we're flush with that centering ring as I work it around. Let me see if I can get the light on it better for you. We're almost to the end. There we have it. Okay, nice. So nice, clean, flush cut right around the base of that ring. I will come in and with some sandpaper later. I'm going to let the glue harden up a little bit more, and I'm just going to fine sand this around the perimeter. But this is just about done and ready to glue into the body tube. Okay, well, we're going to take a step back now, and we're going to do something we should have done earlier. I procrastinated. I put it off thinking that it would be best to do it later, but in hindsight, I probably should have done this first. But we're going to go back and glue in the locking ring that mounts permanently inside the body tube for the engine mount to lock onto. That being said, let me catch you up on a few things. One, the body tube has been primered, and what that did was it erased and covered up all of our lines that we had drawn originally. So the only lines I need now really are just the truss lines that these great gray plastic ones will glue on to, and also our reference line that we need to attach our ring. So I did go back in using the template. I lined the launch lug up with the launch lugs and ensured that the wooden raceways were aligned, and then I made the mark for the motor mount. And then I transferred that mark down here at the bottom. You can see that is right there. And I did draw through the center line of the engine mount a reference line as well. So really all we need to do is just align this line up with that as we push the locking ring in, and we'll be good to go. Again, I should have done that earlier. I didn't, and now things are a little bit more difficult, but nothing's impossible and nothing we can't fix. Okay, the next step we have to do is the glue for this ring must be 2.5 inches down from the bottom of the tube. Now, if we're too close to the bottom, if we're say 2 inch, 2 1/4, we're gonna run into the problem of the engine mount getting stuck in the glue as well, and we cannot afford to do that. So we need to be very careful and get the glue right at the 2.5 inch mark. So I took a wooden applicator, it's an extended Q-tip basically, and from the fattest part of the Q-tip, which is where the majority of the glue is going to be on, I measured back 2.5 inches. So we'll apply this with that black line up against the base of the body tube, and we'll apply it that way. That being said, the locking ring, when it slides in, the way it works is if this is secured in the body tube, this pushes in and then rotates, and then it's locked. To remove it, you untwist and remove. Now, you don't want to glue this in with it in the locked position. It has to be glued in this orientation here where it's free to pull out. So we need to be very careful and not allow this to twist to the right at all as we're inserting it, because if we do, we might lock it and then it's going to be off center and we're not going to have the alignment right. So what I'm going to do purposely is put it on as we're supposed to, unlocked, but I'm going to insert the engine mount a little bit to the right. That way I will be forced to rotate it left to align our marks, and that will ensure that we are completely backed off on the locking ring. I hope that all makes sense. If you have to go back and review what I just said, I know I may have said it wrong, I apologize, but maybe you'll just have to follow along and see as we go. So I'm going to first, let's do it. Yeah, well, I did a dry fit earlier, but I'll show you the dry fit. So again, I'm going to put it in initially to the right of our line. That way, as I go in, I can rotate it left and ensure that I'm flush right as we're lined up on the line. That way, when I pull the tube back out, it's probably attached. No, it stayed in. So, of course, it's falling, but that's the idea of how we're going to do this. Okay, that being said, let's go ahead and get this on, ready to go. Again, unscrewed. We'll just set that up there for the time being. I'm going to apply my glue. Get a paper towel. You only get one shot at this, so let's make it count. Okay, down to our line, and then press. Okay, that's one. I'm gonna do 3 coats. Just to ensure I get enough, because it gets pretty thin. Okay, one more coat. Okay, looking down the tube. Okay, yeah, that looks good. I'm not sure if you can see the ring of glue, but that looks real good. Okay, now let's make sure we see our line. Okay, there's our reference line. We're backed out. Again, I'm going to start a little bit to the right. Okay, we're going to get started. I'm going to push, twist in, flush, and then rotate to our reference line. Right there. Okay, let it sit for a second. Okay. Oh, it didn't hold. Okay. Well, okay, let's clean the glue off the edge. Now I can't afford to get glue on our cardboard. Flush. Okay. Take a peek down there. Okay, it looks good. It looks perpendicular. You can kind of tell if it maybe came off centered, but I think we're good. Okay. Tell you what, let's do a couple test measurements here. Let's see if it's the same. Yes, it is. Okay, we're good. And then this should be 2 and not 3/8. It would be 2 3/8. One, two, 2, 3. A little over 3/8. But we're not quite at the 2.5, which is good. So I think we got her. Can't really fillet this. I'll maybe put some fillets on the back side later. But for now, we're just going to let this sit and cure and harden, and we'll be good to go. All right, got that step out of the way. Okay, now it's time to glue our fins on, and as you can see, I've already got one completely installed. The epoxy on that one is still curing, so I'm not going to mess with it too badly, but I at least want to show you how I did it by doing the second one here. First off, we're going to mix up some 5-minute epoxy. We can get this started here. Doesn't take a whole lot. In fact, that's probably too much as it is, but that's okay. Still want to get equal amounts though now. Okay, we'll get this mixed up. Okay, we're gonna let this sit for just a minute while we go ahead and take care of some sanding. First thing we want to do is we want to sand the inner liner of our retaining ring. That plastic, we want to scuff it up a little bit so it absorbs the epoxy a little bit better. So we'll just sand the inside of that ring. Okay. And again, I don't want to push too hard on this because I still have epoxy drying, but I am going to sand just the outer bit of the tube here right near the top. Just roughen that up just a little bit. Okay, and then also, I placed some masking tape along the line of where the epoxy is going to be, so I don't get too much epoxy spread out and then onto the fin, which would be a mess. We do want to scuff that up though as well, just a little bit. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to get the retaining cap on because that will give us our placement for our fins. So let's just run a little bit of glue here around the perimeter of the tube. Okay. And once we get this on, I'm going to just sort of rotate it to help spread that glue, and then press it down. Okay. And let that sit up for a second, and now we're going to put some glue on our fins. And a lot of this glue is going to come off, actually. We don't want as much as we think we need. We just want a fine, very thin, fine layer. And it's actually going to be easier, I think, to take a Q-tip to help spread this. Okay. Set that aside so we don't drop anything into it. All right, now we can peel our tape off. And we want to make sure we get our orientation right. We want the 90-degree end at the bottom, and we want the slanted end near the front. Okay, and we're going to line it up on our lines that we had created earlier. They're a little vague, but you can still see them in there. And we're just going to lay it down in a position and butt it up against our retaining cap. Now, in all honesty, I think the glue being seen through the clear plastic is kind of ugly. So what I'm more than likely going to do is after this is all dry and cured, I'm going to take it out to the spray booth and airbrush this inner portion white, just to conceal some of that ugliness that is shown there. Okay, so that is it. We've got it in place. I kind of squeegee out as much as I can, but there's not much there. Okay, so that is that fin. So we're gonna let these both cure. And like I said, off camera, I'm gonna take these out and just dress up the inner portion just a little bit. So, but that's it. Now the fin can is ready to go into the rocket. Okay, as you can see, the upper portion of the rocket, the capsule and the transition piece have been completely painted. That is a big relief to get that done, and I'll show that to you here. Gloss white on the transition, and then I just used Tester's enamel paint to fill in the little circles and the thruster holes and whatever else those little doodads are. And then on the capsule itself, gloss black with gloss white on the tip. with my stripe. Little yellow dots are very faint, but they're there, and if you want detail, you got to add those. That's just a yellow acrylic paint with a toothpick dropped into those little holes there. So pretty simple, straightforward. But now it's time to glue the capsule onto the transition. Before I do, I'll point out that there's a little notch right there. You can probably see that. And then there's also a little notch in the plastic right there. And those are going to fit together. That's where that's going to plug in. So, in fact, if you rotate the capsule, it'll lock into that place right there. Okay, so that's going to be actually the last step we do. First thing we've got to do is get some clay up in the nose for nose weight. So I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to look up in there. Now I'm going to basically roll this up into a ball, maybe a short fat snake, but I do want to get it as far up as I can. Okay. I'm trying to avoid touching the capsule with clay on my fingers because that could distort the paint. But we're just going to drop this down into the tube. And you can take anything. I can actually take the back end of my X-Acto, press it in. And it ain't going anywhere. That being said, I'm still going to add a little bit of super glue just around where the clay and the plastic meet. That'll help it forever from popping loose. So let me just put a couple drops down in there. And we'll spray it with some kicker. Okay. I am going to pause the recording, go wash my hands to get the clay film off my fingers, and then we can come back and glue the capsule onto the transition. Be right back. Okay, I'm back, and yeah, it's hard to see up in there. But the clay is glued up into the nose, which is good. You can feel the weight to it, which is good. That's where we want it, up in the front. One thing I'll point out, if you finish the rocket and do a CG test and it still needs more weight, the opening here in the transition will be left open where you can drop more clay into this portion if need be. It won't be as far forward as you'd like to get it, but it's pretty far forward and will help out with your balance. So just food for thought. Don't worry, we're gonna seal this up permanently, but you'll still be able to add weight to here if need be. Okay, I'm gonna get my plastic cement and I'm going to apply the cement to the capsule side of the joint. I'm gonna run a bead all along the base here. Okay, I'll take a Q-tip and just kind of help spread it and pull it up to the edge so we get maximum coverage. Okay. Now again, I'm going to find that notch, which just happens to be in line with our white stripe, which really helps. And then it's going to drop right into that notch there. I'm actually going to put it on sideways, twist it until it falls into place just like that. Perfect. Okay, no mess. Nothing. Absolutely perfect. Okay, we're going to let that dry and cure, and we're actually ready to put the decal on, so we can come back and get the decal on here. We'll do that shortly. Okay, in preparation for the application of the decal, we have one, it's the United States with the flag on it. That's gonna go right here, and I'll get more specific when we get to it, but it's gonna go right here on the face of the capsule. Before I apply the decal, I am gonna run a film of microset on the surface. That will help the decal conform to the ridges that are underneath. If you can see, there is a texture to the capsule. It's not a smooth face. It's got all these ridge lines in it. And we want the decal to not float across those voids. We want it to fill in each little ridge and gap. So that's what this is gonna help do. Once we get the decal down, we're gonna run some micro sol over top of that, and that's gonna soften the decal and really allow it to conform into position. Okay, so that being said, if you look at the capsule, there's the one side that's got the two hole, I don't know how you call it, little concaved areas in here, 1 and 2. Okay, we want to reverse it. It's the opposite side of our white stripe. Okay, it's going to be this area right here. And if you notice, there's these 2 portholes right here. We want basically the right side of the words United States, the D and the S, to be in line with that upper oval. That's our goal for positioning, and we're going to have it centered over the ridges, halfway up the transitional piece there. Okay, so let me go ahead and get the decal started in the water. And we're going to take our micro set, and start with that one. And with our Q-tip, I'm going to dip it in the solution, and I'm just going to smear it all over the surface we're going to put the decal on. Okay, just like that. Okay, let's see if our decal is ready to go. Yep, it's broken free. Okay, so now we're going to come back over to the decal, or to the capsule. We're going to lay this on, and we're going to drag the backing out from underneath it. Okay, we're going to slide it over into position. Again, we want the D and the S over that oval, which it is right there. Okay, we are already centered, top and bottom. Try to align the flag maybe a little bit better. Okay, that's good. I'm going to work out some of the wrinkles and moisture with our Q-tip. Okay, I'm going to dab that dry with our paper towel. That looks really sharp. I'm really impressed with that decal. Okay, it looks good. Okay, now we're going to come to our micro sol. Get a new Q-tip. Okay, we're going to dip it into the solution, and we're just going to brush this all over our decal. Again, this is going to soften up the decal so it'll conform to those little ridges below it. Okay, it's already starting to take effect. I can see it starting to conform. I'm going to leave it alone now and let it do its thing. And while it's drying, you may notice some crinkling and wrinkling in the decal. Don't let that alarm you. Let it. That's part of the process. It'll as it's shrinking, it'll crinkle up, but then it'll smooth out and lay flat as it dries. So just have confidence, be patient, and let it do its own thing. So, all right, we'll just let that be, and we'll come back and check it out when it's done. Okay, we're going to take a time out here in the construction. I am going to show you some of the painting that's been done here, but I also want to point out a significant error that I found in the instructions, and hopefully they will be corrected by the time the final kits are released. If not, maybe an addendum can be posted, or you can just watch this video and know ahead of time what not to do before you do it. And here's what happened. So this is the upper body tube. You can see the painting is complete. I've got the roll pattern done. Everything is as it should be. It looks great. But let me show you what we're dealing with here. The instructions, if you were following along or you have your own set, turn to page 8. Let me bring these in here and show you. This is where we glued that plastic raceway in. Well, yeah, it was done right here. Right here, they're actually showing you where to mark it. 3 inches from the top. Okay, right here again, 3 inches from the top. That's where you glue the base of that plastic raceway. Okay, so get my ruler out and show you. The bottom of the raceway is exactly 3 inches from the top of that tube right there. Okay, that's the proper location for the instructions. Now, when you do it that way, you'll notice one thing. The box art shows that raceway is closer to the bottom of the tube, whereas as it is now, it's darn near in the middle. Okay, so that's one clue that I noticed. But then what really got me was when I was preparing for the decal work, to put the decals on and film it, I got my decals out, and you'll notice if you line up the yellow stripe with the top of the tube as you're supposed to, right there, you'll notice that the silver portion right here where it says cut here, that's to be cut out to go over the top of that raceway. Well, look where the raceway is in relation to that cut here sticker. So I measured, we're a full 3/4 of an inch off. So I debated, should I just tweak the decals? But no, the proper thing to do is to remove that raceway, move it down 3/4 of an inch. That goes for both sides. And then I'm gonna have to, re-sand, refill, and then repaint the silver portion of this tube. That's not the fun, ideal choice, but it's the proper thing to do. So, yeah, I didn't want to do this, but we're gonna have to. I'm going to take, where's my single edge razor blade? Well, let me go, oh, here it is. Okay, so I'm gonna have to, let me lay down some protective tape on both sides. Yeah, this is not the ideal way of fixing it, but it's the proper way. I don't want to get this on the black at all, so let me trim that a little short. We'll lay another piece on this side. Okay. All right, so I'm going to take a fresh single edge blade, going to kind of try to wedge it under the plastic there. Might have to bend the blade a little bit. See if I can wedge it underneath. Okay, there, I got it to pop actually. Aha, there we go. Not as hard as I thought it would be, to be honest with you. So we got it off, and I'm gonna go ahead and get the other side off. I'm going to scuff up this area here, re-glue this, like I said, right about there. Is that gonna allow for the decal to, yeah, see, that's gonna be spot on right there. So I'll get this glued back down. It's gonna take, some putty, some filling, and then repainting, but we'll get it. I'll come back and show you after we get everything fixed up on this. Okay, quick update. I did some final measurements, and instead of the generic 3 3/4 of an inch, I did more precise measuring with the decal and fitting and everything. And what you're going to want to do is, I drew a line here, you're going to want to set the base of your raceway at 3 13/16. Hopefully that's coming through in the light. But 3 13/16 from the top will put you in good alignment for the position of the decal. Let me clean this up a little bit more. So I've been sanding down to the line that I drew. Okay. That's enough to get some good purchase. I'm going to go ahead and leave the tape in position. That gives me a guideline for gluing down these raceways once again. So let me get some thick gel CA here. And we'll go ahead and run a thin bead down the center. And let me grab a toothpick to help spread it a little bit better. And we're going to get all this cleaned up with, I'm going to wipe off the excess. We're going to clean up this with putty and sand. We're going to sand it and, you know, make it look pretty before we repaint it again. So don't worry too much about that, but go ahead and lay it back down in position. Using that new reference line, lay it in right between the tape that we'd put down. And there's our new position for our raceways. And now, if you were to hold this up, the decal, you can see that we're in good position. That cut here box is going to fit nicely right over the top of that raceway. So that's the proper distance right there. We want 3 13/16. Let me go ahead and do this side for you on camera too. Part of me is like, oh, I'm ruining it, but we're gonna have to repaint it anyway. So I don't mind that aspect. It looks a little ugly right now, but we're doing the right thing in the long run. Okay. Get the other raceway. Okay. We'll spread the glue there too. And we'll scrape off any excess. Okay, lay it down at a reference mark. Oh, sorry, bumped the camera there. There, lay it in right between the tape. Oh no, that didn't stick. Okay. We'll let that sit, and I'll come back to this side. We can go ahead and peel this tape up. Okay, so that's a little bit rough. I'll just put some filler in there and sand it down, and we should be good to go. This side we can probably go and peel it up as well. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I won't show you the process, but off camera, like I said, I'll fill it in, we'll repaint this, and all is good. We'll come back and put the decals on when we're all set. Okay, now that we've got some more painting concluded, and I'll show that off to you here real quick, but we are going to glue our bulkhead on as well as the upper tube to the inner stage. But the inner stage is painted. It is complete. First thing we're going to do is we're going to glue this into our bulkhead. And they call for using plastic cement. However, I prefer using epoxy when I use two dissimilar materials. So that's going to go in like that. And then I will show the upper body tube to you. Here it is after our corrections have been made. Again, remember we did drop the raceways down a little bit. And from what I gather, Estes has made a change in the instructions, so that will be corrected. Hopefully before mass production is complete. But yeah, so we're good to go there. And then this is going to end up gluing on top of the inner stage right there. We will make sure and line up our raceways to match those of the inner stage, but we'll do that once we get the epoxy in going. So first off, let's go ahead and mix up some 5-minute epoxy. And I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking because I only got 5 minutes to work with here. Another thing that I already did off camera was I went ahead and scuffed up the plastic shoulders on both sides with some sandpaper. That way it'll accept the epoxy a little bit better. Okay. And if you feel like 5 minutes is not enough time for you to do this, or at least do both at the same time, go ahead and mix up some 15 or even 30-minute epoxy. But again, I don't think it's going to take that long for me to get both done. Okay, so I'm going to put the glue on the inside of the bulkhead. That way any glue squishes out down into the tube and not out onto the plastic itself. Okay. Now direction is not important on this step. It's just a blank tube. So we're just going to slide it in, rotating it as we go. And boy, you can feel we're getting some air. Look at that, the air is pushing it back out. So I'm going to pinch the side as I twist, and that will help release some of that air. Okay, yep. So keep that in mind as you're pushing it, and squeeze the cardboard, and that'll open up a little pocket for that air to escape. Okay, so now we're going to take our epoxy and we're going to put it on the bottom side of the upper tube. Okay, and I've got my angled guide here from Estes. We're going to use that to line up our raceways once we get them in position. Okay, slide that up and in. We'll rotate to help the glue spread, and then I'm going to take, let me scoop the glue out of the way before I end up making a mess. We're going to take our angled piece and we're going to set it on, and we're going to line it up to the raceway here. And I'm just going to rotate our inner stage until it hits the side and release. Yep, and you can eyeball it. If you look down, the two raceways match. And it slid out on me, so let me do that again. And then I'm just going to let it sit vertically and let it dry. Okay, rotate there. And we're just going to let it sit just like that, at least 5 minutes, and then we can handle it, but we're going to give it a while to cure as well. So we'll come back and do a little bit more work. Okay, now we're going to work on our shock cord mount. You've seen this done 1,000 times, pretty straightforward. We're going to be gluing our elastic shock cord into our tri-fold mount. And once again, this is a photocopy. I did not cut this out of the manual because I just prefer doing it this way. So what I like to do is, first off, flip it upside down so the numbers read 1, 2, 3, and just apply a little bit of glue to sections 1 and 2. Actually, we'll do a little bit of 3 as well, just on the bottom side though, or the top side of it. We don't want it all the way down. And then we just make a mess, and that's why I got it down on wax paper, so any excess doesn't go onto my workbench. Okay, and always, always, always have paper towels next to you on the bench. It's like the #1 rule in rocketry. Okay, so I'm going to take my shock cord, and I'm going to set it down at an angle so it doesn't loop over onto itself. Okay, and then I'm going to fold 1 over 2. Okay, then I'm going to spread some glue on the top of this piece here. Same thing, spread it out. And fold that onto 3. Okay, now from here you could leave it as is. I, just for fair measure and safety, I like to take it out and squish this either in my vise or I apply weight to it. I want to get that as flat as possible. That way when I glue this into the body tube, it lays as low and low profile as I can get it so it doesn't impede on the parachute or any ejection material. But that's thin enough as it is, but you know, why not make it a little thinner if you can? just one little quirk that I've got. So I'm going to be doing that, and then hopefully by then some of our epoxy from earlier steps are dry and we can actually start doing some decal work. Okay, now we're ready to apply the decals to the upper body tube. Now, if you've done any decal work on model rockets or any decal work around a rounded surface, you know exactly why I did what I did. If you try to install this one wrap all the way around the rocket, you will rapidly lose your faith in all that is good in the world. Things get ugly real quick. So what I did was I picked an arbitrary middle line alongside of this gray square right here to split it in half. That way we can just do 1/2 at a time and save our sanity. So I'm just going to do one at a time here. I did cut out the section for the Raceway, so that's going to line up right there, and then the yellow stripe is going to match up flush with the top of the tube. So we're going to do this one wrap, get it down, and then we'll do the other wrap, and then just, if need be, stretch the sides a little bit, because once they get wet, the decals are stretchable. Then we'll stretch them and match up and line up with the other stripes. That's our only source of happiness when it comes to decal work. So that being said, let me go ahead and get these started in some water. And then simultaneously, I'm going to spray down the tube with some water. That way we get a little bit of lubrication so we can slide the decal around better. There, just like that. I've already got my paper towels and Q-tips on the ready, so we are set there. Okay, get these. Yeah, I've ruined many decals on many rockets trying to do full body wraps in one fell swoop. It's a recipe for disaster. So this will greatly increase your chances of success. All right, let's see if they're sliding off yet. And they're trying to. Yep, they're ready. Let me soak it one more time. Okay, so I'm gonna start off with the Raceway portion. That way we can kind of get that obstacle out of the way early. Starting to get a little curl under here. Now imagine what this would be like if I had a full wrap of decal. Not pleasant. Okay, we're gonna have to do some tweaking here. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Gotta pull this back into position, work our way around, find the other end. There we go. Okay, let's dab off some of this excess moisture. Let me work around this Raceway. Takes the patience of a turtle to get it done right. Okay. And try to gradually pull out some of the moisture from underneath to the outside. Keep moving that Raceway. Pull things back into position. Okay, things are starting to look good now. Sorry if that was off camera quite a bit there, but you got to get it where the lighting is good for your eyes, more so than the camera's eyes initially, just so you can get it down straight. Come back to that Raceway, make sure you haven't slid things too far out of position. Okay, we're just about done. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the other half in the water and get that started while we finish this up. Now the next panel is going to have two challenges. One challenge we're already aware of, it's getting the decal around that Raceway. But the other challenge we're going to have is then once we get things more or less finalized, then we're going to have to ensure that our lines and everything match up to the other side, and we're gonna have to do that on both ends of the decal. So a little bit more of a challenge, but by doing this one first, you kind of get a feel for it, kind of know what to expect. Okay, so that looks good, looks flat. All right, I'm gonna spray this down again. This should be ready to go. It's been there for a while. Now this time I'm actually going to hold off on the racetrack piece and do that last. I'm going to attempt to do the other side first because it's, well, no, I better not, because no, I think we're better off doing it the way we did it. Find our Raceway. Okay, I'm going to hold that down. There we go. I think we did a better job that time of getting it off. Okay, let's kind of get the stripes somewhat lined up. That'll help us line up our Raceway. And we also want to make sure you didn't mess up your other decal, which we did not, which is good. Okay, kind of get our stripes in line with each other. Go back to this side, do the same. Remember, these decals are somewhat stretchable, so as they harden and stick, you can stretch them to reach each other. Okay, I'm just gonna blotch some of the moisture out. Okay, now it's just fine-tuning it, kind of being nitpicky, but you gotta finesse it gently. A little stretching. Okay, so I'm just gonna finesse this for a while, very small. As it dries, I'm gonna keep stretching it. No reason to show all of that to you on camera. Over 10 minutes for one decal is plenty long enough, so I'll just keep working it. We'll come back because we do have another decal we need to apply on the top, and then we can get to work on the lower body tube as well. Okay, the upper wrap is complete, and like I said, I just kept massaging the decal as it dried. I just kept massaging those ends until I could get the yellows to meet. There's one joint, and if we rotate it 180 degrees, there's the other joint. So again, it just takes patience. Just keep manipulating it, and things will come around. So the next thing we need to do on this portion of the upper tube is to put our serial number. We've got, we're gonna go with 12561. The kit came with a bunch of choices, but for no other reason than the instruction book shows this number on it, so we're gonna go with this one. One goes on the upper body tube and one goes on the lower, but we'll get to the lower once we also have to put our United States decals on the lower tube, but we'll do that later. I want to finish up the upper tube first. The positioning of this, they show it right above the black stripe. How do I explain this? If you look at these gray squares up here, one of the gray squares has a black square in the top left corner of it. That is, if we rotate the rocket to this orientation with this on the left-hand side, then this black stripe is the one we're using for the placement of that decal. I'm actually, because this is a small decal, I'm actually going to use my tweezers to work this one. And it's going to be applied just above that black stripe. And it's not going to be perfectly centered on the stripe, which is kind of annoying. But that's the way it is, so that's how we'll put it. So don't look at me and say, Kevin, you don't know how to put that on straight. Well, no, I do. It's just they don't have it straight either. So let's slide that off. And again, it's not going to be straight with the black stripe. It's going to be a little off to the right. Let me drag it over here a little bit. I'm just matching it up as best I can to the book. Actually, the one is almost in line with the right side, which we have right there. Okay, that's a good position right there. So now I'm just going to take my Q-tip and roll it. I'm not dragging it, I'm rolling it. And that puts pressure down, but it doesn't allow it to slide out of place. So, okay, that looks nice and straight. There we go. Okay, so the upper tube is completely done. We're just going to let that dry now, and we'll get on to the lower tube. Okay, off camera, I did finish up the decals on the lower half. It was only 3 decals. I did the United States name down the side on both sides of the rocket, and then also at the base, I got the matching serial number that we put up on the upper tube. Now we're going to go ahead and glue in our shock cord mount. Now the shock cord mount's got to go in at least 2.5 inches because it's got to clear the length of this shoulder that's on the upper tube. That's quite a distance. That's more than I can reach down with my fingers. So we're gonna have to implement a dowel to help press it in. I've got a used wooden dowel. Let me grab my wood glue. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna smear the glue on the back side of the mount. I've already put a curvature into it. You might be able to see that. That will help match the shape of the tube. And then we're gonna drop it in from above and then let it settle in. I'm not going to be able to physically just push the whole thing in. So let's get that started here. Got my paper towel ready to go. It's going to get messy. Laid in from up top, at least 2.5 inches down. That looks good, and then I'm just going to let it roll over onto its backside. There we go. And then we can take our dowel, press it down, and hopefully, I'm not sure, not enough light, I don't think, to see it in there, but now we're just going to press it in flat to the tube. Just like that. Okay, we're gonna let that dry, and we'll come up and we're gonna do our final closeout. The rocket's pretty much done at this point, so we'll come back and do a review over the whole thing and show you what it looks like. Okay, one additional step I did make is after we glued our shock cord mount into the body tube, I did go ahead and tie the other end to our eyelet that's attached to our bulkhead. At this point, you would mount your parachute to the ring here. I'm not going to do that because I don't carry parachutes in my rockets until the day of the launch. In fact, just moments before the launch. But I do want to point something out. Just throw this at you. The instructions call for the upper portion to be wrapped in masking tape, which I will do to make this a nice snug fit, but that allows you to put a payload in here if you wish, which is a little odd because it's open air through the inner stage, but that's still possible. You know, if you want to put an altimeter in there, you've got open air access for venting. That's really good. But here's my concern. You tape it up, but let's just say the concussion of the ejection charge is enough to overthrow that. And if this decides to pop off, it's gonna get damaged on the way down. But hey, why not attach a smaller parachute to that hook, that little eyelet right there? Maybe just a 9-inch or 12-inch, I mean, you've got plenty of room for as big a parachute as you want. That just as an added security, that if this were to pop off on accident, it would have its own parachute to come down. So it's a little redundant safety system. That's my idea on that, so for what it's worth. But let's go ahead now and tuck everything in and show you what it looks like complete. Okay, you want to line your raceways up with the raceways on the lower tube. There we go. Okay, so now there's two configurations for this. One is to use your display stand, which I've already mounted on the rod into the plastic base. Really cool concept, and what that allows you to do is just simply plug your rocket onto that, and you've got a standing display. Now I know you can't see the rocket right now, but it looks awesome. So let me just go ahead and remove the display stand set and show you the rocket. Can almost fit the whole thing in the screen here, but there is the entire rocket in its complete form. And when it comes time to fly, what you'd want to do is take your two C motors. They call for C53s. The locking ring, oh, my shock cord is down there. Get that out of the way. Okay, the locking ring has the tabs that this will plug into. So we're just going to fit this in. Now, one piece of advice I would like to give you also is when it comes time to installing or removing the fin can, I would recommend, I'm not going to do it now because I don't have any with me, but I would recommend having some motors inside of these tubes when you install or take it out, because you're going to be twisting and an empty tube could possibly compress and snap, or at least, you know, buckle on you. So I think a couple motors in those tubes will help hold the tubes in their configuration. Okay, so now I'm just going to rotate it though, because right now we're not in a slot. There, it just slipped in, and then you can rotate a little bit, and now it's locked. It won't stand vertically because of the fins don't touch the ground, and it doesn't balance on the angled motor caps, but that's okay. You want to be careful though as you twist. Use the tubes, not the fins. The fins can rip off if you use the fins. So use the tubes. There we go. I'm just trying to be gentle with it, and then it slides right out. So there you have it. That is the completion of the all-new Estes Rockets Gemini Titan re-release. What a thrill to have the opportunity to build this and have it in the fleet. If you don't have this, you've got to go out and get one. It is a delight to build, and I can't wait to see how good it flies. On a cluster two-motor flight, this is going to be awesome. So with that, everybody, I'll let you go. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank Estes for providing me this kit to build on their behalf. And yeah, we learned some things along the way. And I will tell you this, after speaking to the folks over at Estes, the issues that I had with some of the measurements and the raceways and whatnot, that should be corrected in the final instruction book. But if not, go ahead and use this as a reference to where these need to be located. Same with the launch lugs. This launch lug needs to be up in the white region here. I just left it alone because it already been filleted and everything. It's okay, but just heads up on that deal. So with that, I'll let you go. I want to thank everybody for watching. God bless, and we'll see you at the launch pad.